Hi, my name is Soile, and you're listening to Heartland, a fan podcast from a fan perspective. Welcome back, or if you're new, welcome. This is a weekly podcast where we talk about Heartland. And currently, we have season 16 airing. So today we're going to talk about episode 3. So let's just dive right in. So it has finally happened. They've produced an episode that'll go to my top 10 list, right to the top. This was the most boring episode of Heartland I've ever watched. And I'm sorry. It's just my opinion. I don't know. It just wasn't really for me. There were moments that I liked, but overall, felt like so many things were off, and it just felt flat and empty. I don't know if it's because I don't really find roping that interesting or what, but I did have this feeling like it didn't have an A plot. And what I mean by that is that usually there's like three different kind of plots going on in one episode. Let's say the A plot is Ty and Amy working with a horse or having some kind of problem with a client. Then we have plot B, we have Georgie with her friends doing something exciting. And let's say plot C is just something very low key, like Jack and Tim driving the cattle. And I just felt like this episode had no A plot. It had, or I would say, B plot, which in my opinion was the Katie Logan Parker storyline. Like something exciting, but also not too heavy. Then it had two C plots: Amy helping Caleb and Sam, and then the situation with Jack, Blue, and Tim. Yeah, I mean, it was an episode, but just not my favorite. For me, this episode felt like it was something that should have happened between episodes. And what I mean by that is that it would just felt like Amber was teaching Sean how to rope, and Carrie and the twins were there to watch. I love the behind the scenes stuff, but that's different. That's not something you put in an episode. But yeah, enough about my opinion. Let's just see what you guys thought. First, we have a comment from Stephanie. They said, overall, it was a decent episode. I don't really have a lot to say as it wasn't really one of my favorites. One thing that really stood out to me was the ending scene with Blue and Jack at Payne's graveside. That really made me emotional. I'm glad Jack has Blue now. I do have to say, Caleb trying to play matchmaker gave me secondhand embarrassment. The guy needs to learn to read the room. Glad Sam talks some sense into him. Hopefully Caleb actually listens to Sam. Love seeing Lindy more involved with some storylines. It's nice she's not always being watched by a family member, but can actually come with Amy on some of her work calls. Yeah, the whole Caleb playing a matchmaker just made me cringe. I too get major secondhand embarrassment when I'm watching TV shows or movies, and it's just like there was a moment that I almost had to pause the episode and just go for a little walk to kind of get rid of that feeling, because I kept fearing that they would actually do something with Amy and Sam. I like them as friends, but I just don't see any romantic there. But the way they kept pushing Sam toward Amy, I just had this fear that that's what they're gonna do. So in the end, when Sam said like, Caleb, like, don't make this awkward, I was relieved. The No Context Heartland said, honestly found parts of this episode boring. I hope the rafting storyline carries on into Lou's return and the rest of the season, though. Otherwise, it seemed out of place. I didn't like that they spent the whole episode treating her like an inattentive mother. It felt so out of character to me. I hope we get to see a lot more of Blue as I really love him. The mention of pain at the end really got me in my feelings. Then Stephanie commented, very much agree with you. Blue not really paying attention to Katie felt so out of character. It felt like they really dumped her down, which I'm not a fan of. Then Michelle Morgan Love said, yeah, like you're telling me a character who's super wary of the outdoors heard her youngest say river rafting and didn't catch her attention? And then No Context Heartland said, right? It feels out of character. This woman is so smart, maybe leads a little with her emotions in some situations, but she is not dumb, and I don't often like when they lean into that for comedic effect. Michelle is great at anything they ask her to do, but I wish they didn't do this time and time again. Yeah, I so agree with that. I almost feel like ever since Peter kind of came back as this like suitor, they have made Lou into this like weird version of Lou. Because we know she's very smart. She's a great mother, but right now she's just like too focused on Peter, and like I don't like how they keep on trying to make us think like, oh, Lou and Peter are so great because she's so excited about them. But because we don't see them and because it makes Katie feel like this, I don't know why anyone would be, yay, Lou and Peter are back together when this is happening. So, not a fan of this. Then Nina said, Sam and Caleb as buddies is the best. Caleb isn't good solo. He needed a buddy after Ty, and I think they're a good match. Once the unconventional cowboy, the other's the lovable goofball, down to try everything once, and it just works. But he's being so obvious with Amy and Sam, and while I know it's out of place of love, and of course if anyone kinda push Amy towards romance, it would be Caleb. But man, at this point, he should know not to push her, and that Amy will do what she wants. I get where he's coming from, and it's sweet. Absolutely. But hopefully, the whole matchmaking takes a backseat for now. After all, Amy doesn't need a man to complete her life. One thought that I had about this whole thing, besides not being a fan of it, was that if they're gonna sell Amy having a romantic interest, it would be through Caleb, because a lot of fans probably think that if it's okay with Caleb, it would be okay with Ty or something like that. By the end of the episode, when Caleb was kind of like, huh? So Amy and you, right? I fully expected Sam to be like, Amy? Whoa, like, no, I've been hitting you all day. Like, haven't you noticed? But that didn't happen, not yet at least. Then they continued, Katie taking advantage of Lou. Love it. I'm so ready for the teenage angst. In a way, I think the writers have created this problem for themselves. No wonder Katie has no clue who she is, because we haven't seen her much since she was born. Even at the same age as Lindy, she didn't have nearly as many lines as Lindy does now. Of course, there's a difference here. This has always been Amy's show, so of course we know Amy's daughter. But I do think the writers have been forced to acknowledge they have little to go off of for Katie now that she's as old as Mallory was when the show started, or a little older than Georgie was when she joined in season 6. Maybe it was intentional, so we could have some more teenage drama when we got to this point. But in a way, it's also sad, because if the show had ended before now, I don't think Katie would have been a remarkable character at all, and that's a bit of a bummer. Truly, more and more, I'm loving the buildup of tension for her, and I think it'll be a chance to showcase Bay's talent. Would love to see her interact with Amy, maybe a trail ride together, because both of them have dealt with tensions with Lou, and I think Amy could be an incredible source of advice for Katie. I mean, that could have been from my keyboard. Also, I really hope they're building up for just a crush on Logan because, as everyone else says, she's way too young. Not to mention, it's so aggressively heteronormative. Let the kid grow and find herself. Let her have friends. Though, from my perspective, it does seem like Logan sees her as a little sister after he kept her calm in the river, and maybe what Katie said in the beginning of the episode is true. Logan feels like a brother. It was nice to see Parker back, but I'm not loving that they were arguing and Katie was poking fun at her phobias. What is it with the women and girls on the ranch not being able to have friends? Again, couldn't agree more. Then they continued, this is going to be my horse girl comment, so bear with me, everyone. The storyline with Blue and Jack touched a really personal note for me because I've been in a somewhat similar situation to Jack and Blue. I bought my horse when I was fresh out of college, in a similar situation to Jack. Cheap horse, not a lot of training, and initially I was in way over my head. From getting dumped off to crying in a barn late at night, wondering if I should sell him, to even a trainer suggesting that he wasn't the right horse for me. The first 2 years of owning him was really tough. I doubted myself a lot, but there was something special there. I could tell. Today, he's still not the easiest horse to ride. He's still stubborn and opinionated. But he's just like his owner in that respect, and I wouldn't trade him for the world. He's my best friend and my buddy, and worth more than money could buy. So the fact that Jack formed this special relationship with Blue made my heart so happy, and the end scene where they visited Payne's grave together made me choke up. Ever so often, if you're lucky, you get a special horse in your life, and the storylines like these are what bring me back to Heartland, because as a horsewoman, I know they get it. That's such a beautiful story, and I'm so happy for people being able to relate a storyline like that because, I would think that there are these like subtle things that only a person who has been through something like that would get. Then they continued. Another great episode, and I'm liking the tension they're building. I'm glad we get more episodes this season. This season really feels like classic Heartland again, with underlying themes throughout the season and not 3,000 storylines playing out per episode. I really hope they keep it up. Then Alberta Dream said, I really liked Blue's story this time, much better than in season 15. I just couldn't believe Team's rudeness. This got me so angry, and I was really happy how Jack solved that problem by buying his own horse at the end. I'm wondering how Katie's character will progress. She seems somewhat lost, doesn't know who she is and who she wants to be. Reminds me of Mallory. I hope they let her find something special. She deserves to find her own unique gift with something she's good at and that makes her happy. Oh, and still no Lisa. I know, can't believe it. Then they continued. I have to add, the end of the episode was very special, a very touching moment. Yeah, I did not see that coming, like, not until Jack went for a ride and they were between the trees, and I was like, wait, this does look like where Paint was buried. And then I saw the stones and I was like, oh boy. But also, like, I wonder if Jack had a similar story with Paint. And maybe that's part of the reason why he's so in love with the horse. But also, somewhere out there, Buddy's feeling a little bit ignored right now. Like, hey, what about me? Am I not great? Then HL Horses said, I enjoyed this episode for the most part. Tim assuming he gets to ride Blue is classic Tim, and especially just so he could prove he can. Also classic Tim bringing in Russ behind Jack's back. Tim's whole argument about Blue actually made sense and wasn't irrational like Tim can sometimes get. It was also so nice to see that Tim was actually really worried about Jack getting hurt. I'm glad we got to see a bit more of Big River. I thought it was cool they paralleled the horses throwing off the riders at the beginning. I like seeing Amy interact with people as friends. Still don't have her female friend we want her for her, but at least she has someone other than Caleb now. I'm glad they finally mentioned why Jack bought Blue in the first place last season, and it actually made sense. From what I can remember, last season they made it look like Jack just bought a horse to buy a horse when he already had one, but I could be wrong. Also, I'm not really a fan of the wardrobe of Katie or Parker. They are literally in the middle school, and the way they are dressed is so not that. Unless I'm just so out of the loop these days. I did like to see a normal domestic bedtime routine between Amy and Lindy. I thought the rafting was a cool new idea. I'm very interested on how they filmed it. The Amy roping scene was really cool looking. I do actually like Sam as a character, and Sam and Caleb being friends is nice to see too. But Caleb matchmaking was cringe. I mean, I think that's what they were going for, but I got slight secondhand embarrassment. LOL. Glad Sam called him off though. Some lines that made me laugh were throw it at the dummy and then Caleb ropes Sam and then Tim asking what Tweedledee and Tweedledum are doing. I think my favorite part of the episode was the end when he visited Payne's grave with Blue. So sweet. I'm really looking forward to next week's episode, but with some trepidation as well. Those two moments were my favorite moments as well. Like as soon as they said, throw it at the dummy, I was like, is he gonna throw it around Sam? And then he did. But the Tim comment was just classic Tim. Then Dumbarell said, I really enjoyed it, mainly because it was humorous with a bit of trauma thrown in too. It was nice to see Amy so relaxed and mucking about with Sam and Caleb. Shame Caleb is such an unsubtle matchmaker. I thought it was lovely that Jack stopped by Payne's grave to introduce Blue to him. The teenage trio is fun to watch. Parker is really jealous of Katie in Logan's report. There's an undeniable relationship developing between those. So, are we heading for a scandal given Drew's age? Lastly, Lou needs to start taking an interest in her daughter's life and well being again to stop her feeling so rejected. Then MacLeod's Heartland said, I enjoyed this episode. It was funny hearing Amy comment that Hawk is a good name because Amber has a horse with the same name. I'm interested to see Sam work at the rodeo school, and seeing Amy turn Hawk into a roping horse was fun to see. I'm glad she's fully back into working with horses. I liked all the Amy and Lindy scenes, especially when she was being put to bed. It gives the family a little bit more a real feeling. The cookout was fun to see as well. I like seeing Amy and Caleb interacting as friends. He's probably her best friend at this point because they have known each other for around 14 years. I enjoyed Katie's storyline this episode. I do wish that Michelle and Bay actually FaceTimed because it didn't look as real as it could have. I mean, all they would have had to do for a real FaceTime is change the names in their phones. I thought it was interesting how Katie took advantage of Lou not listening to what she was saying. I'm beginning to think that Logan is only trying to be friendly and nice to Katie. The way he was talking to her at some times seemed more mentorish on account that he is a few years older than her. It may be that Katie has a crush on Logan as well as Parker. That will be interesting to see lay out as there is bound to be a fight between them because of it. I was almost holding my breath when they were in the rapids. That scene was very well done. I do think Tim was a little too pushy about Jack selling Blue. The parallel scene at the beginning of Caleb and Tim getting thrown off was clever, but it was a little hard to follow for me because the changes were so quick. As soon as the ending scene began and I saw the pile of rocks, I started to tear up because I knew it was paint. That was such a good scene. I wish we got an explanation or where Jessica was. I don't know if this episode will end up being one of my favorites of the season, but it was definitely still very good. Then they continued. After some thought, I realized that if Michelle and Bay did an actual FaceTime, then when the cameras zoomed in on Katie's phone, they would be shown of the part of the screen where Katie could see herself. So I think the way they did it worked out well. Then Emily said, this wasn't my favorite episode, but I still liked it. Definitely saw more of the Tim we know in sneaking around behind Jack's back. I think Caleb's matchmaking was done really well. It was humorous, and I like how it wasn't made a big deal or anything, just like any friend would joke around. Awesome to see Parker again, and really hoping that Katie and Logan stay as good friends, kind of like Georgie was with Adam for a long time. The closing scene was really subtly added, probably my favorite part. It was a really good touch to end the episode. Then the story chemist said, Episode 3 of season 16 was boring. I just couldn't get into it. The only thing that surprised me was the blue storyline that was interesting and kept me watching. Otherwise, I might have switched off. The rest of the episode storylines were downright boring and predictable with a smidge of struggle that was easily solved. If it wasn't for Jack and Tim carrying the episode, it would have been disastrous. The cinematography with the horses was well done, which I enjoyed. I hope the next episode has more to it. Yeah, I was a little thrown off at first, like, what's Tim's deal with Blue and Jack? But then when he said, I'm just worried what he might do to someone else, I was like, is he worried about Jack? And then I was a little more okay with the storyline. Then, as Brock said, for me it was enjoyable. Tim was back to his old self, and so was Lou. The part that I thought was off was Parker had on way too much makeup. It just didn't look right. I actually didn't even notice that. Then Gelbach said, I've noticed with this season that they don't seem to get too deep into the stories like they used to. Episodes used to seem longer and more in depth, but now it's like short little stories that don't really go far. Not sure if that makes sense, but it just seems like short little blurbs where characters don't really dive deep into the situation for a longer period of time. Then Dip said, Poor Lou. The character whose story affected me the most in this episode was actually Lou, even though she was barely on screen at all. Yes, she's not perfect, but none of them are. Lou is very ambitious and spreads herself too thin. Did she drop the ball as a parent in this episode? Yep, she was distracted by work on the phone call and clearly has no clue what Katie is thinking and feeling right now. I also remembered how much Lou worried last season about how her decision to try again with Peter would affect Katie. I thought about how she wanted Katie's approval before she committed to it. Now this season, Katie is unhappy going to Vancouver with her mother and also unhappy when Lou goes without her. We are in for a bumpy ride until these two work things out. I'm not unsympathetic to Katie at all. Being 13 is difficult all in its own, never mind dealing with all this change, but she will get through it. What broke my heart was hearing Katie say to Logan, she and my dad are too busy living their best life to care about what I'm doing. Right. God forbid that Lou be truly happy for even a short time. Poor Lou. And then no context Heartland commented under that. It makes me so sad. I felt like they really pushed distracted Lou this episode to the point where she was kind of out of character. I hope this gets resolved between her and Katie as the season goes on. I was glad that the writers clarified that Katie sees Logan as a big brother, and I am not sure if Parker's jealousy stems from still having a crush on Logan or not wanting to share Katie with another fan. I love the Jack-Blue partnership and how cleverly Jack dealt with Tim's meddling. Jack was still able to ride to the rescue, but I wonder if Jack finally admitted that he is feeling old is a hint that he may have health issues this season. We have a new trio of friends, Amy, Caleb, Sam. I'm glad you brought up the whole Katie Logan Parker thing because I really hope that they stick to Katie and Logan just being friends. I don't mind Parker having crush on him. I just hope they don't go forward with it. But I do think it's realistic that she would not only be jealous over Logan, but also losing Katie to Logan in a way, because that's just how teenagers are. And I think it's important to show that and show young people that that happens to other people and it's okay. And you will live through it. Then Cynthia Ream said, "It was nice to know where Lindy was at. When Amy rode off to the rescue, my first thought was, where's Lindy? And then I remembered that she went on a play date after the cookout." Also, Lindy had a play date. Right. I wonder who it was with. Then a review from Smoking Holsters. It was a nice Heartland episode, and I really had no issues with it. It just wasn't an amazing or even memorable one as far as I'm concerned. I do love the drone work. Lindy had a play date. Although we have no idea with who, I feel a little better. I like the Tim Jack Blue story, though I think they sort of dragged it a little. I think a lot of people forget two important things when they write about this pair. For one, they've rode together either in the rodeo or after for over 40 years. Even with the 10-year break, that's a long time, and as far as I can tell, they depend on and care about each other a lot. The second is that Tim isn't just some guy. He's a four-time national all-around rodeo champion, which puts him into a very unique group. By the way, Tom Erickson, the stunt coordinator, was a two-time champ. Caleb had his poster of Tim on his wall when he was a kid. I think it's important to keep that in mind during episodes like this. I liked how they wove the roping through the whole episode. I really like how both Amy and Sam told Caleb that they were happy being friends. I like how Katie said that Logan is more like a big brother. We'll see if that continues. I hope it does. It's also great that Logan is scared of Lou. I think they're pushing the envelope on the Lou-Katie relationship thing. I really have a hard time believing that Katie said whitewater rafting and Lou was too used to hear that. And really, where's Peter in all of this? The paint scene is nice, but it always makes me wonder what they did with Pegasus. And then lastly, a comment from Sharon. I'm really liking season 16, and if the first 3 episodes are anything to go by, can't wait for the next 12. Tim's ego really took a fall, and as always, he won't admit when he's wrong. Amy helping Caleb and Sam, or rather doing the work correctly, unlike Caleb. I like the friendship between Katie and Logan, gives someone they can both talk to. Parker being jealous in a way is her own fault. She consistently quotes statistics in the negative. Agree with Katie about her irrational phobias. And here I thought they were really rational. Logan was great helping Katie when she started to panic. Gigi to the rescue, but seriously, Amy was more concerned about how the horse did, rather than her niece or Logan. Katie plus others wanted Lou and Peter to get back together, and because they are trying to make the relationship work, it seems to interfere how they want Lou to be. Damned if she does, and damned if she doesn't. Katie thinks that Lou is ignoring her, but I think Katie is doing the same thing. Some teenagers don't talk to their parents and then blame them for not listening. Sam is a nice guy, but in my opinion, he and Amy just don't fit. Can't wait for the Timbo next week. And I think that's a nice segue to see what tomorrow's episode will be about. So we have episode 4 airing tomorrow, and it's called Spark to Flame. And the synopsis says, Amy's surprised to learn that Finn has returned to town. Jack and Tim win Hudson's Entrepreneur of the Year award, which leads to unexpected problems for Lou and the arrival of someone from Tim's past. I'm both looking forward to and fearing of Finn's return. If situation was different, I would be over the moon about it. But while I'm interested to see what they have in store for Amy and Finn this season, I'm also already sad that we will know that it will not last for a long time. I don't know how I'll feel about it, but I guess we will see next week. As for the Jack and Tim stuff, I'm really interested to see who Peter Dillon plays, because he seems to know Tim very well, because he calls him Timbo. So that is also something that I'm really looking forward to. Not to mention Lou, Lisa, Jessica, Rick, and some other characters are back, so it just seems like a fun episode all around. Probably with a hint of sadness, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Thanks for tuning in this week, and I'll hope you enjoy episode 4, and I will talk to you again next week. Till then, keep your noses clean and your brow to try, as they say. Bye.